Hey, what's up? It's your boy Luke Chang. So in this video, I'm basically going to be explaining the science of how muscles grow in simple terms and what it means in terms of how you should be training in the gym. So if you don't know me, I spent my entire teenage life locked up indoors studying exercise science, and then went to school and got a degree in kinesiology, so I know some stuff. And I'm gonna put some shirtless videos of me flexing on the screen. Okay, let's get started. So you may have heard in school or PE or whatever that the way that muscles grow is when you lift weights or use your muscles, it creates micro tears and damages the muscle fibers or whatever, and then your muscles grow back bigger and stronger. Now, this is not completely exactly correct. There's some truth in it, but it's not entirely accurate. So yes, when you use your muscles, it does result in some degree of micro tears and muscle damage. And yes, that muscle damage will be repaired after you work out when you eat food and sleep, but that muscle damage and repair process alone is not what leads to the increase in muscle size and strength. We know this because in studies where they basically inflicted muscle damage alone with no other factors, the muscle repairs, but it doesn't grow. So, what actually causes the muscle fibers to grow, or as we say, hypertrophy? The answer is tension. Tension is a scientific word for stretching force. When you lift weights, the weights lengthen and stretch your muscle fibers apart, and when you lift the weight, you generate force and shorten the muscle. When the muscle fibers experience the tension from the weight, they receive a signal to grow. If the body has enough supply of protein, it'll get used for muscle growth. So that's the simplified explanation. But how exactly does that translate to the way that we lift weights if our goal is muscle growth? The first thing I should mention is whenever we use our muscles, we're not using all of our muscle fibers. To save energy, our body always uses the minimum amount of muscle required based on how much force we are trying to produce. That's why, for example, walking 10 or 20,000 steps in a day will not grow your calves. Your calves have adapted to the weight of each step so that you're able to repeat it thousands of times in a day. You may have heard of the terms type 1 and type 2 muscle fibers. So, type 1 muscle fiber is basically the weaker, smaller, and slower contracting muscle fiber, but it has great energy efficiency. So, for most day to day activities, we use mostly type 1 muscle fiber. On the other hand, type 2 muscle fiber is the bigger, stronger, and more forceful muscle fiber that only gets used when we generate a higher amount of force. A great visual example of the muscle fiber types is when you look at long distance runners versus sprinters. Long distance runners train and have more type 1 fibers, so they are generally smaller, and sprinters train and have more type 2 fibers, so they generally are more muscular. When training for hypertrophy, our goal in the gym is to get the type 2 muscle fibers activated so that they actually experience tension from the weight we are lifting. So now the question is, how do we get those type 2 muscle fibers to activate in our training? And the simple answer is we have to be using a weight that is more than the type 1 fibers can handle alone, and then generate enough speed and force so the type 2 fibers kick into gear. This is why you may have been seeing on social media lately a lot of people talk about training to failure. As I said before, your body will use the weaker, smaller type 1 fibers, and then as you get close to muscle failure, that is when the larger type 2 fibers activate. So if you want a set to contribute to muscle growth, it is mandatory that you get close to failure. However, there is another discussion to be had about muscle failure, which is the accumulation of fatigue. You see, as you get closer to failure, you accumulate more fatigue, which then means you have to recover more, and that subtracts from the resources that you want to go towards muscle growth. For this reason, it is ideal to limit the volume of your training, essentially meaning you should not go to the gym and do as much as you can possibly do. It's very easy to fall into this trap as a beginner and even intermediate level trainee because it's easy to think, well, muscles grow when we lift weights, so lifting weights more should mean more muscle, right? But actually lifting weights more really just means needing to recover more. Now, for those people who have an unlimited supply of food and sleep, that probably isn't an issue, but for the majority of people, I would argue that it's better to spend less time in the gym and instead focus on pushing a limited amount of sets close to muscle failure. As someone who's been training for more than a decade and tried every workout program you can imagine, I find now that 3 to 4 days in the gym is perfect for getting everything I need to get done. Uh, do as many warm-up sets as you need, but for the real sets that you take to failure, you only really need 3 to 6 of those sets per muscle group per week. If you're new to the gym, it's okay to do more reps when you're learning the exercises, but once you get it down, you should be using a weight that is heavy enough that you're only able to do somewhere between 4 to 8 reps. And that's because more reps means more fatigue. So that's pretty much the end of my simply explained science video. This was more to just explain the why I train the way that I do. And I'll be doing more videos on workouts and stuff, so yep, I'll see you in the next one.